Here is something strange that has happened over the last 2 years, and almost nobody saw it coming. The most talked about player in basketball right now is not just winning games. She is quietly becoming one of the funniest people in advertising, and she is not even trying to be. Her name is Caitlin Clark. She plays guard for the Indiana Fever. And in between breaking scoring records and selling out arenas, she has shown up in a string of television commercials that have people laughing out loud, rewinding to watch again, and sending the clips to everyone they know. So today we are going to do something fun. We are going to go through these commercials one by one. The Nike ad. The State Farm ads. The Capital One Diner. All of them. We will talk about why they work, why they are funny, and why every big brand in the country suddenly wants Caitlin Clark in their living room. Grab your coffee. Settle in. Let's get into it. Before we get to the commercials, let's set the table for anybody who has not been following along closely. Caitlin Clark grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa. She played her college basketball at the University of Iowa, and over 4 years there she became the most prolific scorer in the history of NCAA Division I basketball, men's or women's. By the time she finished, she had scored 3,951 career points. Not the most for a woman. The most for anyone. She passed every man who ever played the college game, too. She did it by shooting from distances that, honestly, made television announcers laugh while they were calling the game. She would pull up from the logo at center court, the way most players pull up from the free throw line, and it would go in. She led Iowa to back-to-back national championship games. Crowds that used to show up by the thousands started showing up by the tens of thousands. Tickets that used to be free were suddenly being resold for hundreds of dollars. Then, in 2024, the Indiana Fever made her the #1 overall pick in the WNBA draft. In her first professional season, she averaged 19.2 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds a game. She set the league's single-season assist record. She was named Rookie of the Year, and she won it almost unanimously, taking 66 of 67 votes. Television ratings for her games broke records that had stood for decades. Arenas around the league had to move her games to bigger buildings just to fit everyone who wanted in. So that is the athlete. A record-setting shooter with a calm face and a dry sense of humor. Now hold on to that picture, because every single commercial we are about to look at is built on top of it. Let's start with the cleanest one. The Nike spot. The whole commercial is built around one simple running joke, and it is a joke that anybody who watched her in college will recognize instantly. The idea is this. People keep doubting whether Caitlin Clark can make a shot from somewhere ridiculous, and she keeps proving them wrong. Here is how it plays out. Somebody points to a spot on the floor and questions whether she can hit it. She hits it. So they point somewhere farther away. A sideline. A stairwell. The upper deck of the arena. Each time, the distance gets a little more absurd, and each time the people around her get a little more skeptical, as if they have completely forgotten who they are talking to. And every time, she calmly knocks it down without changing her expression. The beauty of it is that there is no big speech. There is no dramatic music. There is no slow-motion hero shot of her releasing the ball. It is just an ordinary setting, a basketball, and a group of people who keep learning the same lesson over and over again. Somebody doubts her, she makes the shot. Somebody doubts her from farther back, she makes that one too. And the reason it lands is that it is barely an exaggeration. This is the part one love. Nike did not have to invent a fictional, superhuman version of Caitlin Clark to make the commercial funny. They just took the real one and turned the dial up by maybe 5%. Because in real games, she really did do this. She really did pull up from 30 feet as casually as other players take a free throw. She torched South Carolina, she torched LSU, she lit up Ohio State, Nebraska, Maryland, from the exact kinds of spots the actors in the ad are pointing at. So when you watch the Nike commercial, you are not watching a fantasy. You are watching a slightly cartoonish version of something millions of people saw with their own eyes on a Saturday afternoon. Every fan who ever sat on their couch and said, "There is no way she makes this from there," and then watched it splash through the net. Nike built an entire advertisement around that exact feeling. That is the secret. The humor comes from the gap between what the people in the room believe is impossible and what she has already proven is routine. They think she is bluffing. We know she is not. And we get to sit there and enjoy watching them find out. The restraint is what makes it work. When you are advertising the most exciting shooter women's basketball has ever produced, you do not need to add excitement on top. You just need to get out of the way and let the footage do the talking. Nike understood that better than almost anyone, and the ad is stronger for how little it tries to do. Now, here is the business story sitting underneath that commercial, because the timing is not an accident. Caitlin Clark first signed with Nike back in 2022, while she was still in college, under the new rules that let college athletes earn money from their name and likeness. That original deal expired after her final college season. And when it did, the biggest shoe companies in the world lined up to try to sign her. According to the Wall Street Journal and The Athletic, her representatives told Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and Puma that it would take at least $3 million a year to land her. Puma reportedly heard that number and dropped out almost immediately. Adidas put together an offer and even prepared a prototype shoe, but their bid came in around $6 million over 4 years. Under Armour got serious. They reportedly brought in Stephen Curry himself to help recruit her, and offered something in the range of $16 million over 4 years, with her own signature shoe. But in the end, Nike won. The reported deal is worth up to $28 million over 8 years, and it includes her own signature shoe, which, at the time, made her one of only a small handful of women's basketball players in history to ever get one. The reports described it as the richest sponsorship contract a women's basketball player had ever signed. Just to put that in perspective, her rookie salary in the WNBA itself was a little over $76,000 that first year. The Nike deal dwarfed her actual basketball paycheck many times over. That tells you everything about where her real value sits. She is not just a great player. She is one of the most bankable names in all of American sports. So when Nike releases a commercial about a young woman who can hit a shot from anywhere, the joke has a second layer. She is not only hitting from anywhere on the court. She is, you could say, hitting from anywhere off the court too. The deals, the records, the attention, it all keeps landing. And that wink is part of why the ad felt like such a moment when it arrived. If Nike captured her range, State Farm went after something else entirely. State Farm captured her identity. A quick note for context, because this matters. Caitlin Clark became the first female athlete State Farm ever signed to this kind of deal, back before her final college season. So State Farm got in early, and they have leaned into her hard ever since, with several commercials over the past couple of years. The one I want to start with is called From the Logo, and it is tied to a campaign State Farm built around the idea of the assist, the little bits of help in everyday life that nobody notices. The phrase comes straight off the basketball court. The logo is that big circle at center court, and shooting from the logo means launching from way out. It is the shot that made half the country stop what they were doing every single time she pulled it. So the commercial takes that famous, jaw-dropping basketball moment and turns it into something completely ordinary. You see Caitlin Clark in normal, everyday places. A kitchen, a living room, a spot at a table. And everything she is doing is technically a totally normal household activity. The joke is that she insists on doing all of it from logo distance, like she cannot turn it off. She pours milk from across the room. She tosses a tomato into a salad from the far end of the kitchen. Little moments like that, one after another, each one a small impossible toss that lands perfectly. And there is even a line in the spirit of, "Life would be easier if I could do everything from the logo instead of from a stadium." But here is the detail that makes it sing. She makes it look like nothing. There is no big reaction, no celebration, no fist pump. She has the same calm, even face the whole time, as if launching a tomato across the kitchen and landing it in a bowl is just a Tuesday afternoon. And that is the real Caitlin Clark brand in a nutshell. She does not celebrate the extraordinary, because to her, the extraordinary is normal. That is what State Farm understood about her. They did not write her as bubbly or loud or over the top. They wrote her as quietly, almost ridiculously, sure of herself. And the more ordinary she makes the impossible look, the funnier the whole thing becomes. Then there is the other State Farm commercial, and this one flips the whole tone. This is the one with Jimmy Butler and Reggie Miller, and instead of quiet, it leans into total chaos. Here is the setup. A couple has had a little fender bender in a parking lot. They are standing there looking at the damage, frustrated, and one of them mutters the word, shoot, the way any of us would after backing into a pole. And the second that word leaves their mouth, Caitlin Clark appears out of nowhere, basketball in hand, ready to launch a jump shot. That is the whole engine of the joke. The word, shoot, triggers her like muscle memory. She is locked in, ready to fire, completely in game mode, except there is no hoop anywhere in sight. She looks around, a little confused, and basically says, fine, I'll shoot, but I don't see a basket. Then the couple says it again. And this time Jimmy Butler shows up, the NBA All-Star, also ready to shoot, also wondering where the hoop is. Now you have got two of the most competitive shooters in basketball spawning into a parking lot every time somebody gets exasperated. For folks who have been watching basketball for 30 or 40 years, the kicker at the end is the best part. Clark and Butler start singing the old like a good neighbor, State Farm is their jingle, the one we have all had stuck in our heads for decades. That brings out Jake from State Farm, who explains how easy it is to file a claim, even on an old beat-up car. And he uses the example of an old Pacer, which is a make of car. Which, of course, summons Reggie Miller, the Indiana Pacers legend, the Hall of Famer, one of the greatest deep shooters the NBA ever had, who pops up and asks if somebody called for an old Pacer. It is a pun, it is a cameo, and it ties a bow on the whole thing. Reggie Miller built an entire career on long-range shooting, so putting him in a commercial about a young woman known for long-range shooting is a wink the older fans get immediately. And here is the thing that makes the comedy actually work. Caitlin Clark never overplays it. She does not mug for the camera. She does not make a big goofy face. She just plays it straight, with that same competitive intensity she has in a real game, dropped into a situation where it makes absolutely no sense. The gap between how seriously she takes it and how silly the setting is, that is where all the laughs come from. By the way, Clark herself has talked about how surreal it was to film. She has said in interviews that Jimmy Butler had been one of her favorite players since she was a kid, so being on set with him left her a little starstruck. That is a nice reminder that even the biggest new star in the sport was, not long ago, just a fan like the rest of us. Now we come to what might be the most important commercial of the whole bunch, and you will see why in a minute. The Capital One ad. For years, Capital One has run one of the most beloved commercial series in American sports, and it always comes out around March Madness. If you watch a lot of basketball, you know it by heart. The cast has rotated over the years, but it has long centered on Charles Barkley, Samuel L. Jackson, and Magic Johnson, sitting around in a diner, ribbing each other, talking trash about brackets. Spike Lee directed many of them and appeared in plenty. Over the years, the ads have referenced Larry Bird and Michael Jordan. These are some of the most famous faces in the history of the sport and in Hollywood, all in one booth. So in 2026, Capital One did something that, a few years ago, would have been unthinkable. They put Caitlin Clark in that booth. Not as a quick cameo. Not as a prop standing in the background. As a full co-star, sitting right alongside Magic, Barkley, and Samuel L. Jackson. The commercial is tied to one of Capital One's selling points, which is a certain percentage of cashback. They make a running gag out of the number 3. And Clark, naturally, turns 3 into 3-pointers. When one of the legends mentions the number, she springs into action. She picks a burger up off a passing waitress's tray and flicks it across the diner so it lands perfectly on a plate. She tosses scoops of ice cream. She launches food across the room with the same casual precision she uses to throw a full-court pass, and every single one lands exactly where it should. And everyone around her reacts big. They are amazed. They are laughing. She, as always, stays calm. Same smirk. Same flat confidence. That contrast is the engine again. The legends are losing their minds, and she is acting like she does this every morning before breakfast. Now here is why this commercial matters more than the others, and it has nothing to do with the jokes. It works on 3 different levels at the same time, and that third level is the big one. The first level is simple. It is funny. The trick shots in the diner are genuinely fun to watch. The second level is that it introduces her to people who do not follow women's basketball at all. There are millions of folks who have never watched a WNBA game in their life, but they have watched these Capital One ads every March for 15 years. And suddenly, There she is, holding her own. The third level is the one that really matters. By putting her in a booth with Magic Johnson and Charles Barkley, and having her look completely at home there, Capital One was making a statement. They were saying she belongs in that company. And once a brand puts you in a room with those names, and you do not look out of place for a single second, you are not an up-and-comer anymore. You have arrived. That is a torch being passed, on national television, during the biggest basketball event of the year. And then there is what happened off camera, which might be the most genuine part of the whole story. Capital One shared some behind-the-scenes footage from the shoot, and it spread around online almost as fast as the commercial itself. In it, you can see Magic Johnson lighting up when he meets her, greeting her warmly. He was not putting on a show for the cameras. He seemed legitimately thrilled to be around her. And this is not a small thing, because Magic Johnson does not hand out praise lightly. This is a man who saw the entire modern history of the sport up close. He has, on more than one occasion, compared what Caitlin Clark is doing for basketball to what he and Larry Bird did for the NBA back in the early 1980s. The rivalry that, a lot of historians will tell you, saved the league and turned it into the global business it is today. For Magic to put her impact in that conversation is about as high as the compliment gets. Charles Barkley, for his part, has been one of her loudest public defenders since the day she entered the league. He has talked about her being a phenomenon, about wanting to make time in his schedule to go see her play in person. On the set, by all accounts, he treated her like she had been part of the crew for years. People watching that behind-the-scenes clip got to see a side of her that does not always come through in the heat of a game. The looseness. The easy laughter. The ability to trade jokes with three of the biggest personalities in sports and entertainment and not get rattled. Fans who had never given women's basketball a second thought were suddenly sharing clips of a young woman flicking burger buns across a diner. That is the moment her appeal stopped being a basketball story and became a mainstream story. Let's keep moving, because there is a shorter, sharper one worth a quick look. The Xfinity commercial. This one runs on a simple identity joke. The premise is that not every Caitlin Clark is the same person. There are, apparently, a bunch of people walking around named Caitlin Clark, a city planner, an everyday person here and there, all of them introducing themselves in a perfectly ordinary way. And then the basketball Caitlin Clark shows up, and she delivers her line completely deadpan. Something to the effect of, she shoots from way out there and that is kind of her thing. No drama. No exclamation point. Just a dry, understated little statement of fact, like she is reading the weather. It is probably the most low-key performance she gives in any of these ads, and because it is so understated, it works. The product tie-in is a clever little metaphor too. The whole pitch is that the internet connection is reliable, and they lean on the idea that her connection is about as dependable as her jump shot. When your spokesperson is somebody who hits shots from distances that ought to require a special permit, that comparison writes itself. It is a small ad. It does not need to be big. It is in and out in 30 seconds, and it leaves you smiling. Now here is one that looks simple on the surface but is smarter than it lets on. The Gainbridge ad. This one is built entirely around the idea of the assist. If you have watched her play, you know that Caitlin Clark is not only a scorer. She is one of the best passers the game has seen in a long time. In college, she finished with more than 1,000 career assists. In her final season at Iowa, she was averaging more than 8 assists a game while still being the #1 scoring threat on the floor. Doing both of those things at the same time, at that level, is genuinely rare. Most great scorers are not great passers, and most great passers are not great scorers. She was running both jobs at once. So the commercial takes that real basketball trait and translates it into everyday life. Instead of court assists, you get life assists. She tosses some popcorn through the air and it lands perfectly in someone's mouth, just as they happen to look up. She slides into a high five at the exact right second. Little moments where she sees something coming a beat before everybody else and quietly sets it up. And that is the part that mirrors who she actually is on the court. Her whole game is built on seeing the play before it happens, reading angles and passing lanes a full second before the defense reacts. So when the ad shows her doing the same thing in a kitchen or a hallway, it does not feel random. It feels like a true translation of her game into ordinary surroundings. The humor here is gentle. She is not trying to be funny. The The situations become funny because she is simply too aware of everything around her. People keep realizing, a moment too late, that she has already made her move. It is not loud and it is not flashy. It just keeps stacking up small, slightly impossible little moments that feel believable if you have watched enough of her games. And that quiet confidence is exactly why it lands. Now I want to slow down, because there is one commercial in this whole lineup that does not chase a laugh at all. The Gatorade campaign, sometimes referred to as, "Let her cook." This one feels completely different the moment it starts, and that is on purpose. There are no jokes here. There is no punchline. The tone is heavier and slower, almost like a short documentary. The visuals show the parts of an athlete's life that nobody puts on a highlight reel. Repetition, sweat, missed shots, exhaustion. The grind that happens in an empty gym long after everybody else has gone home. The message underneath it is simple but powerful. Wins are not handed to you. You earn them, one boring rep at a time, by losing and learning and working and getting back up and doing it again. Success is built out of all those unglamorous hours, not out of one magical moment under the lights. Now, here is what is interesting. Instead of just praising the commercial, a lot of people online started having fun with it. Some viewers thought the serious, dramatic tone was a little much for somebody whose actual game looks so loose and natural. They joked about how intense the whole thing felt. And in a funny way, that reaction became part of the ad's life. People were talking about it either way. And that points to something genuinely rare about Caitlin Clark. She can star in a slow, serious, almost cinematic commercial about grit and sacrifice, and she can also star in a silly ad where she flips a tomato across a kitchen, and both of them feel true. She is not just the stone-faced hero. She is not just the wisecracking jokester. She is both, depending on the day. The brands that figured that out are the ones getting the most out of her. Gatorade took a real risk here. Everybody else was going funny. They went serious. And it paid off because it reminded people that behind all the logo threes and the viral moments, there is somebody who worked relentlessly for years before any of this. Before the sold-out arenas. Before the $28 million deal. There was a girl in a gym, shooting the same shot over and over again, long after the lights in everybody else's house had gone out. That version of her is just as real as the one tossing burger buns across a diner. The fact that both can exist in the same advertising year without feeling like a contradiction tells you how unusual her appeal really is. State Farm was not done. They came back with something more modern, built to look like it belongs on a phone screen rather than a television set. This one is structured to feel like a clip you might stumble across while scrolling. Loose, quick, almost like it was not even meant to be a polished commercial. It folds in a real piece of basketball news as its jumping-off point and lets Caitlin Clark react to it the way any of us react to news online, with quick takes piling on top of each other. The whole thing mimics the way sports news actually spreads now. A clip, a reaction, somebody jumping in at the wrong moment, a little confusion, a laugh, all stacked up within a few minutes. It plays less like a 30-second ad and more like a moment that accidentally went viral on its own. And the reason she fits so naturally into that format is that she already lives there. Her highlights have been bouncing around every platform for years. She is completely comfortable in that fast, reaction-driven world of online sports talk. So when State Farm drops her into a commercial that imitates it, she does not look like an actor reading lines off a card. She looks like a person scrolling through the exact same feed you are scrolling through. That kind of comfort is almost impossible to fake. You either have it or you do not, and she clearly has it. There is one more State Farm spot, and this is where she fully embraces poking fun at herself. This one plays off her rookie status. Remember, she entered the WNBA as maybe the most hyped rookie in the history of women's basketball, coming off that record-breaking college career. So the commercial sets up a familiar everyday scene, a little household mishap, the kind of thing that gets you on the phone with your insurance company, and the conversation turns to what counts as a rookie mistake. And that is when the joke flips. Caitlin Clark gets pulled into the conversation, and she is introduced as the Rookie of the Year. But the ad immediately undercuts it by treating that title like it happened 100 years ago. That was last year, the bit goes. Ancient history. What makes it funny is that the audience already knows her real story, so the joke has layers. She was never really a rookie in the ordinary sense. She walked into the league and immediately averaged around 19 points and 8 assists a game, became one of the most impactful first-year guards the league had ever seen, and drove record-breaking attendance and television numbers across the whole WNBA. So when the commercial waves off her rookie award as old news, it is half joke and half truth. She blew past the rookie label almost the instant she got it. And that is why she is the perfect person to deliver the line. She can stand there with her Rookie of the Year trophy already in the rearview mirror and play along with the idea that it is no big deal, because in a way, the league really did treat her like a veteran from day one. It is self-aware humor, and it only works because we all watched her trajectory happen in real time. So let's pull back and look at the whole picture, because once you line all of these commercials up next to each other, a pattern jumps out. Look at what each brand is actually selling through her. Nike sells her range, the idea that she can do it from anywhere. State Farm sells her confidence and her competitiveness, that calm, dialed-in intensity. Capital One sells her status, putting her at the table with the legends. Gatorade sells her grind, the years of work nobody saw. Xfinity sells her reliability. Gainbridge sells her vision. Now think about what that means. No two of those commercials are selling the same thing, and yet they are all selling the same person. That almost never happens. Most athletes can carry one note. They are the tough one, or the funny one, or the inspiring one. Caitlin Clark can play all of those notes, sometimes in the same month, and none of them feel like a stretch. That is what makes her so valuable to so many different companies at once. And here is the part that ties it all together. Every one of these ads circles back to the same quality. It is not the scoring, and it is not even the shooting. It is the way she draws attention without ever seeming to chase it. She does not beg you to watch. She just does the thing, with a flat expression, and you cannot look away. The brands took that exact quality and built their commercials around it. A couple of years ago, the conversation about Caitlin Clark was all about potential. What could she become? How good might she be? That conversation is over. We are not watching potential anymore. We are watching something more permanent get built, one commercial, one record, one impossible shot at a time. The fact that she can be the punchline of a parking lot comedy and the heart of a serious documentary-style ad in the same year is not a contradiction. It is the whole point. That range on the court and off it is exactly why she is where she is. So that is the tour. The Nike ad about shooting from anywhere. The State Farm chaos with Jimmy Butler and Reggie Miller. The Capital One diner with Magic, Barkley, and Samuel L. Jackson. The quiet grind of the Gatorade spot. Each one of them tells you something a little different about her, and put together, they tell you why she might be the most interesting figure in basketball right now, on the court and on your television. Here is what I want to know from you. Of all the commercials we talked about today, which one made you laugh the hardest? Was it the parking lot? Was it the diner? Or do you think the serious Gatorade one was the best of the bunch? Tell me down in the comments. I read them, and I want to hear it. And here is the bigger question to chew on. Is Caitlin Clark already the most impactful face in basketball today? Full stop, men's or women's? Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and give it a like. And if you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button so you do not miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.